Before I mention the Logitech gaming software and how to configure this mouse, I wanted to mention two things that are very important to keep in mind. If you do not want to use the gaming software for whatever reason, this mouse is a standard USB input device, meaning that Windows 7, 8, and 10, at least the three systems that I operate, recognize this mouse as soon as I plugged it into a USB port. I was able to adjust some of the basic mouse features in the mouse settings in the control panel. So it does function as a standard mouse. Also, there are 3 onboard profiles that Logitech provides you with. This mouse is capable of being unplugged from one computer, plugged into a different computer, and those onboard profiles are available. So without the Logitech gaming software, this mouse does have some pretty cool features available. Now overall, you're not going to be able to fine-tune this mouse or get the most out of this mouse without the gaming software from Logitech. Which brings me to the second thing to keep in mind. You are going to more than likely get a digital signature error when you install the gaming software for an app that's called CPU Core Temp. This is an app that Logitech has that allows you to monitor the temperature using a keyboard with an LCD screen. None of that really matters for this particular video. It's just something that's going to pop up. You can close that window, and then in most computers it will restart. On my Windows 7 machine, it restarted my computer, and then once my computer came back up, the Logitech software was fine. I was able to go into the mouse as you see here. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the gaming software itself and how to get this thing up and running very quickly. The Logitech gaming software is fairly straightforward. At the bottom you'll see the devices that the gaming software has control of. Over to the right you'll have different options and settings that you can adjust. So in the case of the 502 Hero gaming mouse, the first icon is the home icon, which we'll get into in just one second. The second icon are your profile and DPI settings. The third icon is the RGB or lighting options, which gives you some visual cues for the profiles that you're currently using. And then you have the input analysis, which is essentially a heat map for the mouse. So you can push play, click on various buttons, and then stop that and see what you clicked on and how many times you clicked on it. This is usually for people that are trying to fine-tune their gaming experience. Most of you won't need this input analysis for quite some time. Now, getting back to the home icon, which is for the most part the most important thing to start with. The first thing I usually do with my 502s is I'll go to the home icon or the home tab and then choose to configure the onboard memory. When you configure the onboard memory, you're allowed to change 3 profiles that are built into the mouse. Now, when you disconnect the 502 or could disconnect the mouse, connecting it to another computer, the DPI settings that you adjust here will work even if the other computer does not have Logitech gaming software. This is very important to understand. You're basically configuring this mouse to work under any particular circumstance that it may be faced with. Whether it's a different computer or a different operating system, these DPI settings will stay consistent. So when you look at the other option, which is configuring the profile stored within the computer that the mouse is currently connected to, you're allowed to have numerous different profiles that work with various programs that you use, various games, various business programs even. This mouse works very well for any kind of graphic work. If you're doing video editing, it can be very useful to change DPI on the fly to get a finite adjustment. So this is a very good mouse for both business and for gaming. Now when it comes to the onboard memory, I'll just show you what I usually set mine up to. Profile 1, I will go into the number of levels of DPI sensitivity right here and adjust it to 1. This is just what I do. If you have your own preference, feel free to do whatever you feel is best. And I'll set it to 2000, which is a fairly average, somewhat quick mouse movement. I find this to be useful for desktop. It works for internet browsing. It's not overly sensitive, and yet again it's not too slow. So then I will go to Profile 2 and I will adjust that down to 3 levels of DPI sensitivity, which one of the DPIs, the lowest one, will be 1500, 500 DPI less than what I consider to be kind of average, and then I'll set 2000 as the middle, and then I'll set a high end on the spectrum to 2500. Now once again, this isn't an extremely fast mouse setting, but it's somewhat of a safe setting when you're trying to do things that maybe aren't gaming related. It could work in gaming, it depends on what you prefer. Now when we look at these different buttons, you have the DPI up button here near the fingertips, and then you have the DPI down button, and you can do this in real time. If I click on it right now, you can see that this bar here moves up and down based on what I click. I can assign a default DPI for this particular profile by simply clicking on Assign Default. So now the 2000 DPI is the default when I select Profile 2. This gets easier as you learn how to adjust this. Now as far as assigning Shift goes, what you're doing when you assign Shift is you're selecting this button here. When you press on this button here, it will very quickly change to the DPI that you have chosen. So in this case, it's going to change to the lower DPI of 1500. Now this configuration allows you to make a quick DPI shift to get maybe a finite adjustment. Now moving on to Profile 3, I will then adjust this to have up to 5 levels. This is a profile that I will generally have that allows me to do various things like very intense DPI. So I may have a default low end of 2000, which is, like I said, my particular fail-safe, and then I'll go ahead and adjust 3000, and then I'll adjust so on down the line. Now remember, 15,000 DPI, 12,000 DPI, this pointer is going to be rocket fast. It's going to be zipping all over the screen. And this happens in real time, so you can actually adjust this mouse to such a high DPI that it's difficult to adjust it back down, but if you get stuck, you can do restore defaults. Now the polling rate is up to you. Now if you assign it to poll more often, there are various things that happen with communication between the mouse sometimes when you're under load. Poll settings by default are 500. You have all the profiles set to 500 with the exception of Profile 2. Profile 2 could be 500. It just depends on what works for you. These are the reports per second, how often the mouse is communicating. So if I would say Profile 2 was for business and I need accuracy, 1,000 reports per second is plenty. That should ensure that I don't have any difficult adjustments that are bouncing between locations. That's something you can get into at another time. Now moving on, if we get into the RGB cycle, what I will do generally is set Profile 1, which is my single DPI setting, to a fixed color. And let's just say it's red. And what that will do is change the little logo to red. Now most of the time this little logo is behind under your hand, it's under your palm, so you're not going to see it. But sometimes it's useful in a low light environment because you can sort of see the light from the side of your hand. So this can be a visual indicator that I am currently in Profile 1. Then for Profile 2, I might use the color cycle option, which just automatically changes between all the colors that are available. And then for Profile 3, I might set that to a breathing effect, as you see here. But I would maybe change it to blue or some other color, and that way I know I'm in Profile 3. These are useful visual indicators. I didn't really think that the RGB mouse thing was a big deal, but it was kind of cool to have a visual indicator of which profile I was currently using. Now as far as sleep timers go and the rate of breathing, these are options you can adjust. This mouse is heavily adjustable. I mean, I think there's infinite levels of DPI options you can choose from. So you also have this option to sync. If you have other Logitech devices that are using an RGB sync, you can sync all of your devices using this new feature in the Hero version. I couldn't do this as easily on my older 502. That might have been something on my end, but this new mouse allows you to sync your lighting all together so you can be like that pro gamer. To be quite honest, the fact that the 502 series won me over was no small feat. I was ticked at Logitech when I bought my first 502, and I was fully expecting to refund the 502 that I initially purchased. I was angry with Logitech's failure to make a good mouse wheel. I was upset that their wireless mice were such garbage. I purchased laser mice that were about $100 or in some cases over $100 from Logitech, and they repeatedly failed over the years. I was not a Logitech fan. I was angry at them. The 502 effectively won me over. I would not use another mouse besides the 502. So that's the best endorsement I can give this thing. Good luck.
It's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. What the hell is this? Reload? Oh, wow. Look at that, bro. Shit, man. This keeper has more quality than I thought. I can tell you. Counterweight to make it heavier. I guess that goes inside.